Now at Verizon, we have some big news for your peace of mind. For all our customers, existing and new, we're locking in low prices for 3 years guaranteed on My Plan and My Home. That's future you peace of mind. And everyone can save on a brand new phone on My Plan when you trade in any phone from one of our top brands. That's new phone peace of mind. Because at Verizon, whether you're already a customer or you're just joining us, we got you. Visit Verizon today. Price guarantee applies to then current base monthly rate. Additional terms and conditions apply for all offers.
Instacart is on a mission to have you not leave the couch this basketball season. Because between the pre-game rituals and the post-game interviews, it can be difficult to find time for everything else. So let Instacart take care of your game day snacks or weekly restocks and get delivery in as fast as 30 minutes. Because we hear it's bad luck to be hungry on game day. So download the Instacart app today and enjoy $0 delivery fees on your first 3 orders. Service fees apply for 3 orders in 14 days, excludes restaurants.
Hello and welcome to mini episode number 433 of Real Life Ghost Stories. And I have 2 spooky stories for you today, and the last story comes from the 18th of December 2024. And story number 1 comes from Kimberly. I've dealt with spirits and unexplainable situations since I was a little girl. I've so many stories to tell, but today I will be sharing the ones that I have never been able to forget. My name is Kimberly and I'm 24 years old, and I am from a small town in North Carolina called Goldsboro. When I say small town, I mean everyone knows everybody. It was a small country town that my grandparents had settled in around the 1960s. My earliest memory is when we had moved into my childhood home at the age of 3. The house was in the middle of nowhere, where they had just begun to build houses. It was always a rumour that the neighbourhood was built over a Native American burial ground. I later came to find out from my mom that no one wanted to buy our plot of land, so they were able to purchase it for super cheap. We were the first to live in this new build. It had 3 bedrooms downstairs and a huge bonus room upstairs that was connected to the attic. When I was around 4, I was home alone with my oldest sister Brooke, who was 12 at this time. I had this play kitchen set that would make noises when you were cooking on it, and it also had a fake phone connected to it that would ring and had fake buttons on it. We were playing kitchen, as we always would, but something was different this time. The details are a little blurry now, but we were sitting there in silence after playing when the phone to the play kitchen started ringing, without either one of us touching it prior. I picked up the phone, and what I thought was a man's voice was speaking to me, saying my name. I can't describe the voice. It was almost demonic. Now that I'm older, I can recognise that. I started freaking out, telling my older sister. She is brushing it off, thinking I am messing with her, but when she realised that I was genuinely upset, she grabbed the phone and was shocked to hear the same voice I was just telling her about. We were so freaked out that she jumped up to grab the landline phone to call my mother, who was at work. When she went to call my mom, the landline wouldn't let the call connect. Instead of it going through, the landline phone kept calling with the number on the phone saying it was our own house phone calling us back, if that makes sense. The same voice came through telling us that it would not let us talk to our mom. She put the phone down, grabbed me, and we sat outside in the driveway until our mom got home. The next story took place in the same house when I was 5 or 6 at this point. My brother Chris and older sister Brooke were in Florida at the time, visiting grandparents on my mother's side. My room was located in the middle of the hallway, to which if you were standing with the door open, you could see my parents' room. I remember being in my room with the door open, watching Dancing with the Stars, trying to dance along with it. I caught a glimpse of something out of the corner of my eye, and when I looked up, it was my brother in his pyjamas with his back facing me, walking into my parents' room. I called out saying, "Chris, you're back already," excited to see him, but he would not turn around or acknowledge me, which is weird because normally he would have come straight to me. I kept calling his name, following him into my parents' bedroom, which was pitch black because they were in the living room. When I entered the bedroom, he then walked into the closet and I watched him vanish into thin air. I always hated that closet. Something about it felt wrong and scary, like a bad energy of a man was standing in there watching you. The doppelganger activity didn't stop after that. The spirits in that house were mean and fed off of the bad energy from all the fighting and negativity that went on. My parents fought all the time and would drag us into it, so it literally was a hotspot of negative energy for them to feed off. The next story was when I was still around 6 years old. I was in the backyard playing on the swing set. I was swinging by myself, staring at my feet as they would go past the ground and then up at the sky. When I looked up, my sister Brooke was standing there staring at me in her normal outfit that she would wear to school. I tried talking to her, but something was off about her. She was just staring at me with this weird smirk on her face before vanishing once again. Side note about the house as well is that Brooke's room at the time was the room to the left of me. She had a friend sleeping over that woke in the middle of the night and was screaming bloody murder that she saw a black figure on all fours crawling across the ceiling. Safe to say she never came back over after that. I have many other stories, but it would take more than this one email to tell them all, so I will leave you with the most recent one. Fast forward to July of this year. I have since moved to Raleigh in North Carolina, about an hour away from my childhood home. My grandparents on my father's side, whose house was also in Goldsboro, passed away. My papa passed first in 2021, and then my grandma followed in 2023. I spent a lot of time with them growing up. We were always at their house, spending the night, going to church, etc. I didn't get to say goodbye to them before passing due to my father being abusive and my siblings and I having to move away and hide for each one of our safeties. The last time I saw them, I was 17, so keep that in mind. Since they have passed, I have never dreamt of them or really thought of them, just from the business of working and paying bills and, well, surviving. I was living in my last apartment, working the night shift, so I never really am able to get into a deep sleep where I dream. But when I do, the dreams are so vivid and almost a lucid type of dreaming. In the dream, I'm at my grandparents' house. It felt like I was in this dream for hours. I'm outside of the house, standing in the driveway, but it was strange. It was dark outside, but it felt off, almost like I was in the upside down, if that makes sense. I was the only person in this dark world. Standing outside, there was no noise. It was completely silent. No wind, no stars, no moon, literally nothing. In front of me was the car that my papa drove when I was a little girl. He did not have this car for the majority of me being older and well into a teenager, so it was weird that the car being shown was the one he had when I was small. I got into the car and was saying, "Papa, are you here? Are you watching over me? Are you my guardian angel? Please give me a sign." As soon as I finished crying out those words, I was all of a sudden sitting in his room. My grandma was sitting in front of me, but she was showing herself around the age of 40. She was 88 when she passed. Keep in mind, this entire dream I could feel his energy and see him, but I wouldn't make eye contact with him or fully acknowledge him. I looked up at her and she was staring so hard into my eyes, it felt like she was staring into my soul. She looked at me and said, "Kimberly, whatever you do not go into that middle bathroom or into the room that used to be your Auntie Christie's." At this point, I was fully aware that I was in a dream. I knew that my grandma and I were alive, but when she continued to speak, I knew that my papa was dead in the dream. I know it sounds crazy, but I don't know how else to explain it. She continued speaking. "Kimberly, that person who keeps trying to show themselves and contact you as your grandpa is not him. Stop." When I look up from her, he was standing behind her, and it was not until she said that I fully looked at him. His face was sunken and grey, his eyes were big black holes, and his mouth was gaping open, a big black hole as well. My grandma then sat up and walked over to him, screaming at him. I couldn't hear what she was saying. I was trying to listen, but I immediately woke from this dream and was freaked out. I will never forget this dream. And since then I've had others where it is that evil entity and it is trying to get me to look at it, but I refuse to give in to it. So here's what stood out to me, right, and I thought was really interesting, is that there seems to be like a theme of deception here, right? That you have the play phone ringing on its own, deep demonic voice, right, terrifying. Then you have the doppelgangers of your brother and your sister, and then you have the pseudo grandfather, this entity pretending to be your grandfather, but when you look at it, it's like sunken features, black holes for eyes, sounds absolutely horrendous, gaping mouth, all the things we don't want to see, right? Is this the same entity the entire time? has this been the same entity the entire time? And that story of the play kitchen phone ringing on its own and the demonic voice being on the other end, like, honestly gave me serious heebie-jeebies. Like, because if it was the landline that was ringing, you'd say it was some freak trying to scare two little girls, you know, or somebody with mental health issues or whatever. But the fact that it was the play kitchen phone, and then when you go to ring your man, a panic, that same voice is on the landline. Oh God, that is terrifying. That is so terrifying. Is that the same black figure that was crawling on the ceiling? Like, is this all the same entity? Because it feels to me like it is, especially when, like, the figure of your brother, right, this doppelganger of your brother goes into your parents' closet and disappears, and you said that you always felt like there was some sort of horrible entity in that closet. And we've talked about this before, about how negative environments, negative emotions, does it attract negative things? You know, is the fact that your parents were obviously not getting on well, they were fighting all the time, you went on to say that your dad was abusive, was all of that giving this negative energy for these horrible malevolent spirits to feed off of, and then that meant that they could manifest in different ways, like doppelgangers, and manifesting in dreams, pretending to be your grandfather. It's absolutely terrifying. I hope that there is a resolution to this, and that your most recent experience is the last experience that you have, because I just don't feel good about that for you. You know, I feel like it's really terrifying, and I'm very sorry that you've had to experience this. And story number 2 comes from Ellie. I did my nursing degree at Canterbury Christchurch. This was only half an hour away from where I lived with my family, but I moved out for the experience and the independence. I ended up living with 3 other girls. There would sometimes be some throwaway comments about someone thinking they'd heard something in the night or something had been moved, but for the most part we just shrugged it off. The girls I lived with were all lovely, and none of them struck me as dishonest. The girl who had the room that was connected to the living room would always come out when she heard one of us go to the bathroom at night. The bathroom was annoyingly located off of the living room. Bit awkward when you've got all your housemates watching the TV and you're just trying to go about your business. One morning she told us that she hadn't slept last night because she'd been so freaked out. We asked her what was wrong, and she said that she had heard someone clear as day stand in the living room and say, "Hi." She said it was slightly childlike, so she assumed it was our flatmate, who had a very sweet but childlike tone to her voice. When she'd gone out to say hello, she realised the living room was pitch black. She turned the light on to see if someone had walked through without turning the light on, to see the living room empty and the bathroom open and empty. She said she freaked out and ran back to her room. She was genuinely quite frightened, but the rest of us, having not heard it, told her that she might have been dreaming or imagined it, but she was fairly adamant. A couple of weeks later I was in the flat on my own, as everyone else had gone home, but I still had placement, which was only a 10-minute walk away from my house, so it made sense to stay in Canterbury. I started to feel slightly on edge, remembering what my flatmate had said, and rang my mum. About 10 minutes into talking, my mum said, "Who is there with you?" And I said to her, "No one, why?" And she said, "Oh, it doesn't matter." I insisted that she told me why she asked, and she said, "Well, me and Grace, my sister, just heard a voice growl down the phone. What are you doing?" over the top of your voice. Given what had happened just a couple of weeks prior, I started to feel quite scared. I didn't have the TV on, and I was sitting alone in the living room, with the only noise being me and my mum on the phone. You best believe I made my sister drive that half an hour to come and stay with me. About 6 months after finishing uni, I met my partner and we moved from Canterbury back to my hometown of Deal. We found a flat, and the first thing I noticed was a plaque on the building showing it had been built in the early 1800s. I decided to look up the history. I found that it has been an all-boys school, and then in the early 1900s had been turned into a nursing home of sorts. The corridor below ours did have a certain creepy abandoned school vibe to it, and was made more creepy by the fact that there were probably around 10 rooms in this corridor, and I only ever saw one tenant, so it felt even more empty and abandoned. At the start of the corridor there was one of those buttons you push to turn the lights on that slowly popped back out to turn the lights back off. If I was ever coming back from a late shift, I would practically sprint down that corridor, praying the lights wouldn't go out and having the well-known feeling that something was right behind me the whole way. There was one evening that I became really unwell. I was unable to keep anything down, so my boyfriend decided to pull the mattress through the living room so I could sleep, and he could look after me while still being able to watch the TV in the living room. The next morning he said to me, "Yeah, I don't want to freak you out, but I saw a girl standing over you last night." My reply was, first of all, how is that not going to freak me out? And second of all, I'm going to need a bit more information than that. He told me that he'd woken up in the middle of the night and seen a girl leaning over me and stroking my hair. He said she had a very subtle glow to her and looked kind. This didn't make me feel any better. I said to him, "Are you sure you weren't dreaming?" And he said no. I sat up, rubbed my eyes and everything to try and make her go away because it was creeping me out, but she was there the whole time. It's also not like my boyfriend to suffer from any sleep disturbances. I said to him, "So what did you do?" And his response, "I turned over and covered my head because she was creeping me out. Nice to know that I'm in safe hands." The weirdest part is that overnight I was cured from whatever illness I'd had the night before. I've suffered my whole life with really bad stomach bugs. It's like a weak spot in my immune system, and never have I recovered so quickly from something that at the time felt so awful. I've had hangovers that have lasted longer. Maybe I should be grateful for the creepy girl leaning over me. The last story isn't exactly ghostly, but something that I find strange. For a long time I've suffered with sleep disturbances like night terrors and sleep paralysis. When I was in my last year of uni, I ended up in a relationship with a guy called Ben. One time I woke up and was experiencing sleep paralysis. I started panicking and breathing really heavily and fast, and all I kept thinking was, I wish Ben was here and could help me. I knew he wouldn't be able to end the sleep paralysis, but just knowing someone else is there can be a comfort. When I could eventually move again, I rolled over to look at the time and it was about 5 o'clock in the morning, so I attempted to get back to sleep as I had to be up in an hour. When I woke up for placement, I sent Ben a message, as you do, and asked him how he slept. His response shocked me. He told me that he hadn't slept very well. He'd been awake since about 5 o'clock because he'd had a horrible dream that I was lying next to him and needed his help, but he couldn't move to help me. I told him about what had happened, and we both agreed that it was strange, but could also be a massive coincidence. That relationship ended a while ago and I'm now with my fiancé. He's very good and patient when it comes to my night terrors and sleep paralysis and does what he can do to help. One night I again woke up not being able to move. I started panicking again and tried to scream, but I was unable to. And I was thinking, please wake up, I need you. But he doesn't, and eventually I was able to move again just like before. I didn't bother waking him up because it's the middle of the night and he gets up early for work. The next day, when we were both home from work, he told me the exact same thing that Ben did. He told me that he had had a dream that I was lying next to him needing his help, but he was unable to move to get to me. He didn't know at this point that I'd had sleep paralysis in the night, and also didn't know about the time that it had happened with Ben. Again, I suppose this time around it could be chalked up to the fact that he was in the same bed and potentially subconsciously he could hear my panicked breathing or just another coincidence. But I find it strange that it has now happened twice. And the first time I wasn't even in the same house as the person. Ellie, I would love to know between you and me where the flat was that you were living in when you were studying in Christchurch. I want to know. Please send me an email and let me know because I'm curious as to where this flat was. And honestly, I remember living in those houses. Like I lived in houses in the city in Dublin, and they were always older houses, and lots of the older cottages and houses in Canterbury. The toilet is always off the living room. Downstairs, off the living room or off the kitchen. And you're just like, I can't live like this. When Dan and I lived in a place in Canterbury called Zealand Road, we had this lovely little cottage, but the toilet was attached to the spare bedroom. So if anybody was staying over and you needed to go to the toilet in the middle of the night, you'd have to like walk through their bedroom. It was very annoying. But to be that housemate that is hearing everybody get up to go to the toilet in the middle of the night and then hearing a childlike voice say hi in the living room in the middle of the night. Do you know what I would have done if I was her? I would have flicked a match. I'd be flicking my lighter, getting the Zippo out, burning that house down. I'm sorry, don't care. If you guys are all in it, it's happening. The little girl ghost in the living room, you can blame her for this, okay? And then for your ma to hear a growling voice, she must have been like, who the fuck is in the house with you? It sounds absolutely petrifying. And then you moved to this house in Deal, this flat in Deal. Oh God, I don't know if I would have been happy after I'd looked up that history and been like, oh, it was a boys' school. Oh, it was a nursing home. I mean, you're just asking for a haunting then, really, aren't you? Do you know? But again, you know, that glowing girl that was standing over you, clearly she healed you. So while she was creepy and your boyfriend did nothing about it, just turned over and was like, listen, have at it, okay, because I'm not getting involved in this, your illness was gone. And your story about your sleep paralysis is like really fascinating to me, because obviously sleep paralysis is a very real thing and can often feel really paranormal, but you know, it isn't. It is your brain sort of and your body not syncing up, waking up, you know what I mean? And lots of people experience sleep paralysis. But to have sleep paralysis and to be desperately wishing that your boyfriend at the time was there, and somehow sleep paralysis, you manages to communicate with that with him in some way. And I always say it, dreams are weird things. I think there's loads we don't understand about dreams. And I think in the dream world, you find ways to communicate with people who might not be beside you, you know? And look, for the same thing to happen twice with two different people, the same situation where they both had that feeling that you really needed them, but they were unable to move, that to me feels like more than a coincidence. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Thank you to Kimberly and Ellie for sending in your stories. Remember, the last story came from December the 18th, 2024. And if you would like to send in your story, you can do so by emailing it to reallifeghoststoriespodcast@gmail.com. You can also check out the website, reallifeghoststoriespodcast.com. And if you are desperate for some extra content, you can subscribe to the Patreon. That is patreon.com/reallifeghoststories, where for $5 a month or $2 a month, you can get access to heaps of extra content, as well as every single main and mini episode completely ad-free. And on that note, I shall see you next time.